Hello, my name is Corey Olson. Thank you for letting me be here at this pediatric symposium as your keynote speaker. I am currently an LPN who is in grad school for organizational leadership, and in addition we'll be starting my RN program pretty soon. So again, thank you for letting me be here. I'm going to take the next 10 to 15 minutes just to share with you on the topic of dehumanization in the realm of children, I guess you could say, and just kind of discuss with you different parts of what dehumanization is. If you look at our objectives, we'll go over the definition. We'll see how it is similar, if not the same, as some child abuses. And remember, child abuse isn't just physical and sexual, it is also unfortunately mental and vocal. There's all different aspects of abuse that this encompasses. Then we'll set to examples of dehumanization within the adult or parent to child situations, within the child to child peer situations, and then we'll briefly touch on self dehumanization, and then we will wrap it up with what we can do to avoid or watch out for dehumanization and what words we say, etc. Before we get too started, I wanted just to briefly share a story with you that really just puts into aspect how dehumanization can happen when you don't even know it. As I mentioned, I'm a nurse and I am in the outpatient setting at a local medical facility. At the facility we have a plethora of different families come in, and part of my responsibility is to give immunizations. Well, just last week I had to do one of those immunizations. It was for a father and his kiddo who both came in to get flu shots, and I could already tell that Dad was having kind of a stressful day because of whatever factors. He just wasn't, it seemed, on his game, and so I just proceeded really careful in the room, explaining what I was going to do, how things were going to go down, so on and so forth. It just turns out that he really liked me explaining all that because he was a military man and they have order and want things to go a certain way. That's what he said anyways. And so I get ready to give his child, who was probably first or second grade, his flu shot, and this was of course after Dad has his, and Dad was like, "All right, buddy, it's time for you to do this," and of course he started crying. I wouldn't expect a first or second grader to do anything but cry. It's scary to get shots. And I was just kind of taken aback when Dad just kept going on about how he shouldn't cry, how if he wanted to be a soldier man like he was, that soldiers don't cry. And I just thought, I wonder if that's true, if soldiers really don't cry. I would really challenge that. But it just goes to show you that dehumanization, which that was a perfect example of, you know, telling his child he can't have the feelings he's having just to make things go smoother, it could be seen as dehumanization, an instance that people would usually take for granted, think nothing of. And that's why this is such an issue. So what is dehumanization? Well, dehumanization, as you can see here, is kind of just the taking away of the human out of the human. It's removing the civilized characteristics, the sentient qualities of a person or group of people, and really just belittling them to nothing. Recently in the news, the immigration with President Trump and how he's belittling immigrants, calling them animals and different things like that. That's, you know, another example of dehumanization. It's usually, but not always, the target of prejudice or violence. And it's also usually, but not always, purposeful. I like to think of it as less human, and it's a response to conflicting motives. We've all heard the old proverb, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. I don't know who came up with that proverb, but I'd like to have a little sit down with them and see what they were really thinking or what they were seeing when they came up with that. It is in no way the truth. Words hurt a lot. As we'll see in this video that I have for us, ultimately the dehumanization of children is in all essence child abuse. Just let me get it up here quick. Thank you for your patience. It should start any time now.
Sometimes someone hurts you so bad.
Brat. That's what that says there. Useless.
It stops hurting at all.
Freak. Dumb.
Until something makes you feel good.
Idiot.
And then
Stupid.
it all comes back. Every word.
Failure. Worthless.
Every
Retard.
act, every moment. How could you ever understand where I come from? Even if you ask, even if you listen, you do not really hear or see or feel. You don't remember my story. You haven't walked my path. You haven't seen what I've seen. My past defines me. This is who I am. I am unseen, unheard, unwanted. That is what I am, if even I am anything.
Alright, we're going to stop it there. I will be sending out to our website this PowerPoint presentation so you can go ahead and finish it there. But I just wanted to give you a visual of some of the words that I've heard in my clinical setting, and I think families, like siblings or even parents, take for granted sometimes when they've had a rough or stressful day, or things just haven't gone the way they wanted. So speaking of using words correctly, we're going to kind of get into the examples I have right now of dehumanization, starting with the adult or parent to child dehumanization. Potential causes being the adult or parent being mistreated themselves as a child. You lead on example, so if that's how they were brought up themselves, it very likely might be some of the same practices they bring into their parenting styles. Traumatic life events. This can be, on the realm from the loss of a spouse to like a car accident that really just left him with a head injury that changes everything. Personality, social disorders, stress, depression, and just, everyday struggles like making ends meet or the unstableness of getting basic needs. In nursing school, we often talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where you need the food, the warmth, the shelter before you can move on to any of those other needs. This is the exact same thing. And then narcissistic parents. We're seeing, I feel anyways, that the younger the parents are getting, the more narcissistic they end to be, and parents are getting young nowadays. Although I am getting old too, so it depends on how you want to look at that. But some of the ways we can combat dehumanization as adults is mindfulness. Being mindful of the words we're using and the tones we're saying those words in. If we're saying them out of anger, just as like a reflex sort of a thing, or if we're really taking time to think about them. We need to avoid negativity. We need to really listen to what our kiddo is saying, or the kiddo that we're working with, and really see, hear, what they have to say, and not just, yeah, while we're writing. We need to support inclusivity. That's a big one, because again, lead by example. If you're supportive, they'll grow up more than likely supportive. The empathic communication, this is getting ever so more popular in the clinical setting. Rephrasing things just to help get people to talk to you and to really understand what they're saying. Like, so I understand you're feeling sad. What are some reasons why you're feeling sad? That sort of a thing. The cognitive behavior therapy, and then really watching our nonverbal communication, because kids see everything. And what all of this over here comes down to is seeing the damage that can be done before the damage is done. We're also going to get to the child-to-child dehumanization examples. Those you'll see some of the same things, like you could take stress and depression into thought when you're thinking of potential causes for this peer-to-peer dehumanization to happen, but kids are also still learning emotional intelligence. They're still learning that empathy. That doesn't mean you don't have to show it to them or try to teach them the ways to be more empathic, but it just means you have to pay a little bit more attention to that and really reiterate yourself with the kiddos. Again, you could look at bullying. That's, become a really, I don't think it ever was not a big thing, but it's getting more and more out of hand, and the bullying is getting worse and worse. That can definitely lead to some of that acting out in dehumanizational things as well. And then the big one here being upbringing. Just really, following the steps of your parents. So knowing that as a parent, what could you do different, or what should you do different, and really just trying to make conscious steps and decisions to make those improvements. Improvements for the kiddos could be, again, the empathy, acknowledgement from parents or caregivers. Things like this, the technology that I hold right here in my hand while kiddo, is sitting right here trying to have you read them a book. You're just like flipping through everything, paying no attention to them, like they're not even a human sitting there. A lot of times people say, well, you need to limit the kiddo's screen time, but what about limiting the parent's screen time? I think that needs to happen too. Therapy, talking about feelings and open communication. Again, supporting inclusivity. Parents that give a damn, that are active in their child's life, really making steps to help them make proper decisions and, not belittling them for the mistakes they made, but taking them as examples to work off of and make something else about them better. And then the self-expression is a big one. I gave you the story of my dad where I can just, when I was little and would fall off my bike and scrape my knee or something like that, I'd cry and go running to mom, and dad would just say, oh, you're fine, just wipe it off and you'll get back on and don't even worry about it, that sort of a thing. We wouldn't really think anything of that, honestly, but I'm 32 and I remember my dad saying those things to me, so it had some sort of lasting effect. And then I also like to bring up the point of praising the child for something they've done, and then if there's something that didn't go as planned or that they need to work on, then carefully segueing into, I saw this happen, tell me a little bit about it. Do you think we could maybe try doing this, that, or the other thing to not let that happen again? And then the self-dehumanization. What I wanted to touch on over here is, since dehumanization is still kind of new to the child psychology realm, a lot of psychologists or therapists look at patterns over times of established length. Therapy can't really be done on something if you don't know what the issue is. So unfortunately, time just kind of needs to happen where you can see patterns developing in dehumanization. Like, you know, the kiddo's constantly going to the principal's office for this underlying issue, or, you know, mom always goes to work and does the same thing every day, and this part of her day always stresses her out, that sort of a thing. Because these actions as adults that we have upon our kiddos, they're really just damaging to some extent. In our video, you can hear you saw how the little kid was talking about being unseen, unheard, unwanted, and then questioned if being anything. Like, no kid should have to question being anything, and I know kids do. Kids should be out, like, playing in the sandbox, or, you know, swinging or whatnot. It's crazy what some of these kids are going through nowadays, and I've seen it in the clinic. Like, I've heard of it. I've done intakes where they tell me this is happening because of this, and it seriously breaks my heart. So by doing some of the things I talked about, implementing changes, really listening to the kiddos, being there for them, using words carefully, we can turn this, even if I'm anything, really into, kiddo, you are more than everything to me. And that will change their whole childhood perspective. Just another quote I want to leave you with. It's a little bit blurry up here, so I'll just read it really quick. The words with which a child's heart is poisoned, whether through malice or through ignorance, remain branded in his memory, and sooner or later they burn his soul. What it comes down to is trying. Kids can only do so much. It's really the adults in their life, their parents, the schools, their caregivers, that really need to step up and, you know, validate them as a human, and talking about issues with them no matter how uncomfortable it might be. As I talk about children here, I'm not just talking about toddlers and preschoolers, elementary kids. I mean, this includes teenagers as well, you know, all the way up through like their senior year. That communication just really needs to be there, and we need to be the ones to take the step to communicate with them, to make the change, to be the change. And we also need to step out into our communities. We need to put a presence of dehumanization out there so people know what it is. We need to meet with our lawmakers and senators and really help establish some laws that might help protect kiddos a little bit more. And then we need to educate, educate, educate. And I hope by being up here tonight that I helped educate you a little bit on the subject of dehumanization. I'd like to leave you in thanks with this quote from Martin Luther King Jr. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Thank you for your time, and at this time I will open the floor up to questions.